Long before the name Nigeria ever existed, this land was alive with powerful civilizations, each with its own identity, pride, and way of life. In the vast northern savannah stood the mighty Sokoto Caliphate, a deeply organized Islamic empire founded in the early 19th century. Its influence stretched across cities like Kano, Katsina, and Zaria. Laws were guided by Sharia, leadership flowed through amirs, and society was structured with discipline and hierarchy. Further southwest, the legendary Oyo Empire rose as a symbol of political brilliance and military strength. Its cavalry thundered across the land, enforcing order and expanding influence. The Alefin ruled with authority, but not alone, checked by a powerful council known as the Ayomasai. And in the southeastern forest, the spiritual and cultural system of the Kingdom of NRI flourished. Unlike centralized kingdoms, NRI operated through a unique system of ritual authority, peace, and tradition. Leadership was not imposed, it was earned, respected, and shared. These societies traded, grew, fought, and thrived independently. They were not one nation. They were many worlds, coexisting, but separate. Then came the strangers, from across the sea. At first, they came as traders, exchanging goods along the coast. Palm oil, ivory, and later, influence. But trade quickly turned into control. The Royal Niger Company became the spearhead of British ambition in the region. With royal backing, it didn't just trade, it governed. It signed treaties, many of which local leaders did not fully understand. Some agreements were made under pressure, others under deception. Before long, British authority expanded inland. By the early 1900s, Britain had taken full control, dividing the land into two administrative regions, the Northern Protectorate and the Southern Protectorate. But these were not just administrative lines on a map. They represented two very different systems. The North was governed through indirect rule, preserving traditional authority under British supervision. The South, more exposed to Western education and Christianity, developed differently, economically and politically. Two regions. Two paths. One colonial master. At the center of this transformation stood a man, Frederick Lugard. A soldier. An administrator. A strategist. Lugard saw what others did not, or perhaps, what others ignored. The Southern Protectorate was generating revenue from trade, ports, and resources. The Northern Protectorate, however, was struggling financially. To the British Empire, this imbalance was a problem. Lugard proposed a solution, one that would change history forever. Merge them. Not for unity. Not for shared identity. But for administrative convenience and economic efficiency. Southern wealth would fund Northern administration. And Britain would strengthen its grip over both. It was a calculated decision, cold, strategic, and deeply consequential. But there was one thing missing in this grand plan, the voices of the people. January 1, 1914. A date that would define the future of millions. Without consultation, without referendum, without consent, the Northern and Southern Protectorates were officially merged. A new entity was born. Nigeria. The name itself came from Flora Shaw, who drew inspiration from the great Niger River that flowed through the land. But behind the name was a reality far more complex. Over 250 ethnic groups, hundreds of languages, different religions, different systems of governance, all bound together overnight. It was not a union built on agreement. It was a union imposed by power, a forced marriage between nations that barely knew each other. The new Nigeria was vast, but fragile. The British ruled through indirect rule, especially in the north, working with amirs and traditional leaders. But in the east, this system failed. There were no kings in the same sense. Authority was decentralized. So the British created warrant chiefs, leaders who often lacked legitimacy. This led to resentment, resistance, and eventually, uprisings. Different regions began to grow at different speeds. Education spread faster in the south. Economic development followed similar patterns. And slowly, divisions deepened. Not just cultural differences, but political and economic inequality. The foundation of Nigeria had been laid, but it was not stable. As decades passed, the consequences of 1914 became clearer. When Nigeria gained independence in 1960, it inherited not just freedom, but the unresolved tensions of its creation. Ethnic rivalry, political instability, struggles for power, all rooted, in part, in a forced union. Then came the breaking point. The Nigerian Civil War. A devastating conflict that cost over 1 million lives. It was more than a war. It was a question. Can a country created without unity truly stand as one? Today, Nigeria stands tall, Africa's giant. A nation of over 200 million people. Rich in culture. Rich in talent. Rich in potential. From music to tech, from film to sports. Nigeria continues to shape the world. Yet, the shadow of 1914 still lingers. The question remains: was the amalgamation a mistake? Or was it the beginning of something greater? Because despite everything, Nigeria endures. Not perfect. Not simple. But still standing. Perhaps Nigeria is not just a country. It is an ongoing story. And its final chapter has not yet been written.